On the surface, it seemed like an ordinary morning in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. A small trailer home, a quiet stretch of road, and a family beginning another day. But by the afternoon of May 2nd, 2024, that silence was broken forever. 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack were gone, vanished without a trace. For weeks, the case consumed the community. Volunteers searched the woods, drones scanned the skies, and police dogs tracked every possible scent. Neighbors whispered theories, the media rushed to fill the silence, and the family pleaded for answers. Yet despite the urgency, no sign of the children was ever found. But what if the story we were told at the beginning wasn't the full story? What if the details, as presented, were far more complex, far more troubling than anyone realized? Recently unsealed RCMP court documents have brought new information into the public eye. These are not rumors from social media, not secondhand accounts, but sworn records, interviews, sworn statements, and timelines submitted before a judge. And within these pages are discrepancies that call everything into question. Why do certain accounts of the children's last day conflict with verified records? Why do timelines shift depending on who's speaking? And why does it seem that some details critical to understanding what happened, were overlooked in those crucial first hours? In this episode, we're going to break it down piece by piece. We'll examine the RCMP filings, line them up against what the public was told, and uncover the contradictions hiding in plain sight. Because in the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan, nothing is as straightforward as it first appeared. And as we go deeper, you may begin to wonder, is this a story of a tragic abduction, or a case where the truth has been buried beneath layers of silence, secrecy, and unanswered questions? This channel isn't here for views. We're not here for gossip, and we're definitely not here for entertainment when lives are at stake. Detective Max exists for one purpose: justice. Real justice for the voiceless, for the missing, for the children who can't speak for themselves. If you believe in that same mission, if you're tired of seeing stories pushed aside, cases forgotten, and innocent lives erased, then join this community. Subscribe not just to watch, but to stand with us, to fight with us. This is a movement for truth, and every single subscriber is part of that fight. One voice alone can be ignored, but thousands of voices demanding justice. That's how we put pressure on the system. That's how we force answers. That's how we become the voice these victims never had. But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. Because every view, every comment, every subscriber is a stand against silence and a step toward justice for those who cannot fight for themselves. We've just crossed 4,000 subscribers, all because of your support, and we need that same energy to reach 5,000, then 6,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your fingerprints on that subscribe button and where you're watching from, because wherever you are, the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for justice together. Shock, confusion, silence. That's what gripped the rural community of Lansdowne Station when two young children, 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack, vanished from their family's home. These weren't strangers passing through town. They were children with faces familiar to teachers at Salt Springs Elementary, neighbors along the dirt roads, and friends in the small, tight-knit community. And in the span of just hours, they were gone. The disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan has never been simple. From the very beginning, questions outnumbered answers. The timeline didn't seem to line up. The last confirmed sightings were uncertain, and whispers of what may have happened spread faster than facts. But now, months later, something new has emerged. RCMP court documents tied to this case, quietly filed and only recently unsealed, have shed light on details the public was never meant to see. Details that may change how this entire case is understood. Inside those filings are pieces of testimony, official records, and timelines that don't quite match the story told at first. And that changes everything. Why? Because these aren't rumors. They're not speculation from online forums. These are sworn statements entered into court, meant to withstand scrutiny. And that's why they matter. These pages hold discrepancies, contradictions, and overlooked details that demand a second look. They don't just challenge the public narrative, they shake its very foundation. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to unpack what these documents reveal. We'll walk step by step through the last known days of Lily and Jack Sullivan. We'll compare what was first reported with what the RCMP's own filings suggest. And by the end, one thing will be clear: the truth about this case is far murkier and far more unsettling than anyone realized. To understand why these new RCMP court documents are so critical, we need to return to where this story began. The timeline starts in the final days of April 2024. School records show Lily Sullivan, just 6 years old, was marked absent on April 29th. Her younger brother Jack, only 4, was not enrolled in school, but neighbors would later say they hadn't seen either child outside for several days. Their mother told school staff that Lily was homesick. On April 30th, no teacher or classmate saw Lily return to Salt Springs Elementary. Still, no alarm bells rang. In a small rural community, a child home for a few days with the flu didn't stand out. By May 1st, however, conflicting reports began to emerge. Some locals recalled seeing the Sullivan children in public that day, at a store or possibly outside near their home. But none of these accounts could ever be firmly confirmed. What was certain is that by the evening of May 1st, both Lily and Jack were last said to be inside their family's trailer in Lansdowne Station. The next morning, May 2nd, everything unraveled. According to their parents, they awoke to find the children gone. The front door was unlocked, the baby in the household was still in its crib, and Lily and Jack had vanished. Word spread quickly, and by midday, neighbors, family members, and local volunteers had begun combing the woods and dirt roads surrounding the trailer. Shock hit the community hard. These weren't children thought to be at risk. They weren't known to wander far. Yet suddenly, they were gone, leaving behind nothing but questions. This was the starting point. A narrow timeline, fragile in its details, and heavily reliant on the family's account. And this is why the newly surfaced RCMP court documents matter so much, because the version of events laid out in those filings doesn't perfectly match the original story the public was told. In fact, in several key ways, it directly contradicts it. The newly surfaced RCMP court documents aren't speculation, and they aren't community gossip. They are official filings, search warrants, sworn affidavits, and investigative notes submitted to the court under oath. These documents reveal what investigators were actively pursuing in the critical days after Lily and Jack Sullivan vanished. They lay out, in black and white, the suspicions and the evidence police believed were important enough to bring before a judge. So what exactly were they seeking? The warrants requested access to the Sullivan family's phone records, GPS tracking data from cell towers, and surveillance footage from nearby businesses and highway cameras. They also listed interviews with family members, neighbors, and anyone believed to have seen the children in the hours before their disappearance. And buried in these filings are details the public was never told. For example, the affidavits reference early inconsistencies in the accounts given by the children's parents. Questions about the precise times the children were last seen, about who was home that night, and about what doors were locked or left unlocked before the children were discovered missing. These aren't accusations. They are sworn statements made by investigators as part of their justification for gathering evidence. And that distinction matters, because what's written in a sworn affidavit carries legal weight. It means investigators believed there was a reasonable basis to suspect that timelines or stories weren't fully lining up. For the first time, these documents pull back the curtain on what the RCMP was really thinking in those first frantic days. And they suggest that from the very beginning, police were not only searching the woods and rivers, but also probing the credibility of those closest to Lily and Jack. The RCMP court documents go further than just outlining the search for evidence. They carefully record the accounts given by those closest to Lily and Jack, and most notably, their mother Malia Brooks Murray and her partner Daniel Martell. On the surface, their statements appeared straightforward. The children were put to bed the night of May 1st, and by the morning of May 2nd, they were gone. But the documents show investigators quickly flagged key inconsistencies. For instance, Malia initially told officers that both children had been unwell and were kept home from school for several days. Yet attendance records and witness accounts of Lily being seen in public on May 1st painted a different picture. Was this simply a confused mother, recalling events under stress, or an intentional shift in the timeline? The filings also suggest differences in Daniel Martel's statements. In one version, he described being inside the trailer during the crucial window of time. But in another, cell phone data appeared to place him away from the home for a longer period than he admitted. And then, there are the subtle but troubling references woven through the affidavits, mentions of raised voices, possible arguments overheard by neighbors, and observations from community members about alcohol and drug use in the home. None of these, on their own, prove wrongdoing. But to investigators, they painted a backdrop that couldn't be ignored. The documents are careful in their language. Phrases like possible indicators of neglect and behavior inconsistent with initial reports appear throughout. These are not conclusions. They are suspicions, documented in real time by officers attempting to build a picture of what might have happened. And yet, when placed side by side, the contrasts are striking. What Malia and Daniel described in interviews doesn't fully align with the digital footprints, school records, and witness accounts uncovered in the investigation. It's in those gaps, between words and evidence, that the mystery of Lily and Jack deepens. The RCMP court documents don't stop at witness statements. They also lay out the hard evidence investigators pursued, and what they found. First, GPS data. The filings reveal that digital location records from phones connected to the household raised serious questions. At times when Malia and Daniel claimed to be at home with the children, the data appeared to place one of them elsewhere, on back roads leading away from Lansdowne Station. These aren't minor slips, they're time-stamped contradictions that investigators could not ignore. Surveillance footage added another layer of doubt. A nearby gas station camera reportedly captured a vehicle resembling Daniel's during a period when he claimed to be inside the trailer. The movement didn't match the family's version of events, hinting at unaccounted travel in those crucial hours. But perhaps the most haunting discovery detailed in the documents was a single metallic star sticker, identical to the kind Lily's jacket was decorated with, found near a small wooden bridge not far from the family's home. To many, it might seem like an innocent fragment, easily explained. But in the context of two missing children, it carried chilling weight. Was it coincidence, or a breadcrumb left behind? The court filings also reference trail camera evidence, cameras set up in wooded areas surrounding the search zone. Disturbingly, there was a noted delay in this footage being shared with the public. Days, even weeks, passed before certain clips surfaced, raising questions not only about what was captured, but why it wasn't immediately disclosed. Each of these findings chips away at the surface of the family's narrative. The GPS inconsistencies, the surveillance footage, the sticker, and the withheld trail cam material, they all point to cracks in the official version of events. Taken together, they form a picture that is anything but simple. A picture suggesting that what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan was not a random disappearance in the night, but something far more complex, and possibly far more deliberate. The RCMP court documents also take us back to those first desperate days, the search for Lily and Jack Sullivan. On paper, the scale was enormous. Entire grids were mapped out. Police drones scanned the treetops and riverbanks. Ground units with search dogs combed through the brush, while neighbors formed human chains across open fields. In sheer manpower, this was one of the largest rural mobilizations Nova Scotia had seen in years. The filings include maps that investigators submitted to the courts, showing the exact search perimeters and zones of overlap. Every trail, creek bed, and abandoned structure within a set radius was documented. From the outside, it looked exhaustive, meticulous. And yet, despite this massive effort, the results were almost nothing. No clothing, no footprints, no sign of the children in the thick woods or along the dirt roads. The court papers make clear, the RCMP themselves were stunned at how little was uncovered, given the size of the operation. This absence of evidence raised uncomfortable questions. Had the children ever been in those woods to begin with? Or had the community, with all its manpower and hope, been looking in the wrong place entirely? Some investigators hinted at possible misdirection, subtle cues or statements that may have guided search teams towards certain areas while keeping them away from others. Was this deliberate, or just a natural byproduct of confusion in those frantic first days? What's undeniable is this: a search effort of that scale should have yielded something. But the documents show it yielded almost nothing. And in true crime, sometimes the silence, the empty fields, the untouched creeks, is louder than any single piece of evidence. The RCMP court documents also shine a light on something that many in the community had quietly suspected: institutional failure. Buried within the filings are references to missed opportunities. Internal notes reveal delays in conducting key interviews, days, sometimes weeks, when parents, relatives, and neighbors should have been questioned while memories were still fresh. Evidence, too, was collected late. Some items weren't logged until after potential contamination had already occurred. In a case where every second mattered, those delays may have cost precious ground. The documents also reference reports from Salt Springs Elementary, teachers noting unexplained absences, and even a bruise, described as a possible black eyes on young Jack, weeks before the disappearance. School staff had raised concerns. Social services had been in contact. And yet, somehow, these red flags didn't lead to deeper intervention. One entry in the filings alludes to a troubling phrase: patterns of concern. That language suggests that officials had already seen signals, irregularities in care, potential neglect, but that these signals were never fully acted upon. It paints a stark picture. While the search outside was expansive, the oversight inside, the child welfare system, the investigative structure, was fragmented. Each lapse, each delay, compounded the mystery. And that leads us to a chilling possibility. What if the truth about Lily and Jack Sullivan wasn't lost in the woods, but lost in the system that was supposed to protect them? When the RCMP court documents became public, they didn't just land quietly in a filing cabinet. They hit the community like a thunderclap. For months, Lansdowne Station had been defined by grief and unity. Strangers became search partners. Farmers left their fields, shopkeepers closed early, and families walked shoulder to shoulder through mud and brush, all for Lily and Jack Sullivan. These were people who had believed in a simple, heartbreaking story: two young children gone missing in the woods. But when the documents surfaced, that story began to unravel. Inside those sworn affidavits and police notes were revelations that many found impossible to ignore: timelines that didn't match, evidence that contradicted statements, and suspicions that hinted at something more sinister than a tragic disappearance. Suddenly, the faith the community had placed in Malia Brooks-Murray and Daniel Martell was shaken to its core. On Facebook groups and community boards, the mood shifted overnight. Where once there had been prayers and candlelight vigils, now there were angry threads, questioning whether the parents had been truthful. Some neighbors admitted they felt used, believing they had been misdirected during those desperate first days. One volunteer wrote, "We searched every inch of those woods, but now I wonder if we were ever looking in the right place." The sense of betrayal was not confined to locals. Families who had driven from neighboring towns to join the search voiced outrage when they learned about the discrepancies buried in the filings. To them, it wasn't just about the missing children anymore. It was about trust. Trust in the parents, trust in law enforcement's transparency, and trust in the process that was supposed to bring answers. The media amplified the anger. Headlines shifted almost instantly. What had once read "Community holds hope for missing siblings" now blared parents' stories under scrutiny in Sullivan case. National outlets replayed the smallest details from the court documents: an unverified timeline, a questionable statement, a piece of evidence left unexplained. And as that coverage spread, the court of public opinion turned harsh. In living rooms, at diners, in classrooms, people were no longer asking, "Where are Lily and Jack?" They were asking, what really happened in that home? For Daniel Martell and Malia Brooks-Murray, the fallout was devastating. Once seen as grieving parents, they were now treated as figures of suspicion. Every word they had spoken in interviews, every detail of their behavior during the search, was re-watched, reanalyzed, and reinterpreted under this new light. The RCMP documents didn't just reopen wounds, they reshaped the entire case. And in doing so, they left the community haunted by a chilling possibility that the greatest tragedy wasn't what was lost in the woods, but what may have been hidden in plain sight, all along. As the RCMP filings continue to ripple through the public, one question lingers above all others: what really happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan? 3 theories dominate the conversation, and each carries its own disturbing weight. The first is the possibility of a stranger abduction. Could someone have slipped into that trailer, or intercepted the children outside, without being noticed? Supporters of this theory point to the isolated nature of Lansdowne Station, the long stretches of dirt road, and the gaps in surveillance coverage. But the filings themselves offer little to support this. No reliable vehicle sightings. No confirmed witness accounts of strangers nearby. No physical evidence of an intruder. If it was an abduction, it left behind no trace. The second theory is a staged disappearance. This view suggests that what unfolded on May 2nd was not sudden at all, but carefully constructed. The discrepancies in timelines, the GPS inconsistencies, and the discovery of Lily's metallic star sticker near the wooden bridge all raise the question: were searchers being misdirected from the very beginning? Critics of this theory argue that staging a disappearance on such a scale would require planning and precision, and that so far, no evidence directly proves it was staged. Still, the possibility haunts the case. And then there is the third, most painful theory of all: family involvement. The RCMP affidavits hint at tensions in the home, possible neglect indicators, and inconsistencies in Malia Brooks-Murray and Daniel Martel's accounts. Were the children truly last seen where their parents claimed? Were there warning signs that went ignored? This theory finds fuel in the documents, but it also faces limits. No charges have been filed. No definitive evidence has placed blame. What remains is suspicion, not proof. Yet, even after these documents, gaps remain. The exact moment Lily and Jack vanished. The true last sighting that can be verified. The reasons behind missing or delayed evidence releases. And above all, the simple fact that neither child has been found. So we're left with a chilling uncertainty. Are these court documents giving us the full picture, or only part of it? Have we been handed the truth, or just another layer of misdirection in a case already clouded by silence and contradiction? Until those questions are answered, the mystery of Lily and Jack Sullivan remains unsolved, and the search for justice continues. Despite the revelations inside these court filings, one reality remains unchanged. Lily and Jack Sullivan are still missing. Legally, no charges have been filed against anyone. The parents, Malia Brooks-Murray and Daniel Martel, remain under public suspicion, but not under arrest. And the RCMP has never publicly named a suspect. The investigation is still active. The RCMP continues to appeal for tips from the public, reminding Canadians that even the smallest piece of information could be the key to breaking this case. A $150,000 reward is still on the table for credible information leading to Lily and Jack's discovery. But investigators are also careful. Court filings confirm what many already suspected: certain details are being deliberately held back to protect case integrity, to avoid tipping off potential suspects. And perhaps, because investigators believe someone close to this case already knows more than they've admitted, the public is left in an uneasy middle ground. On one hand, the documents provide chilling insights, glimpses into what investigators have been pursuing behind the scenes. On the other hand, the RCMP's silence on crucial details fuels suspicion, frustration, and endless speculation. And so, the search goes on. 2 children gone. A family fractured. A community scarred. An investigation that, for all its resources, still holds more questions than answers. But one truth remains: until Lily and Jack are found, and until justice is served, this case is not over. Tonight we've gone deep into the files. We've pulled apart sworn police affidavits, search warrants, and investigative notes that were never meant for public eyes. And what we've found is disturbing. Court documents have revealed what was hidden: gaps in timelines, conflicting statements, evidence that doesn't line up, and a system that may have failed 2 children. But for all these revelations, the truth remains just out of reach. Because at the heart of this story are not documents, not theories, not speculation. At the heart of this story are 2 children, Lily Sullivan, just 6 years old, and her little brother Jack, only 4. Their lives interrupted. Their voices silenced. Their whereabouts still unknown. And that's why this case matters. That's why every detail matters. If you believe in justice, if you believe that these children deserve answers, then join us here on Detective Max. This channel isn't about chasing fame. It's about fighting hard for the truth. For the voiceless. For those who can no longer speak for themselves. I want to hear from you. Do these newly released court documents change how you see the case? Or do you believe the truth is still being hidden? Leave your thoughts below. Every comment, every perspective, keeps this case alive in the public eye. And remember, somewhere out there, someone knows what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. Until the day they are found, and until justice is delivered, we will not stop asking questions.